Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Fires that started last week in central Nebraska required assistance from across the state and even Nebraska's military. And while there's no official word on the status of those fires, the latest we heard was Friday evening. The West Division, containing the Eureka Valley fire between Arnold and Myrna, was 75% contained and had burned 4,800 acres at that point. Hadn't changed much from Thursday. So it looks like firefighters were able to put the clamps on the flames on the west side. The East Division saw a significant jump from 55% contained Thursday to 80% Friday. The over 1,300 acres stayed the same. Based on a post from Myrna's volunteer fire department yesterday, they seem to feel much better about the situation. Mass layoffs by the Trump administration cutting into services across the federal government. In Nebraska, that includes overseeing the U.S. Department of Agriculture's response to the avian flu outbreak, as well as working with state agencies that regulate large animal confinement operations. 1/3 of the Nebraska workers across 3 USDA divisions have lost their jobs, including at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center. New U.S. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins says the agency is eliminating positions that are no longer necessary. But the Nebraska Farmers Union says many of the federal programs help the state's farmers and ranchers meet conservation goals.
Putting solar panels on their hog units, or they're making improvements in their cropping system, or they're updating their diesel irrigation engine and moving it into an electric motor system.
Hansen says some Nebraska farmers decided to upgrade their operations because they had the federal funds to help them. Now, he says they may no longer have access to that money, which leaves them in the lurch.
The folks who do the work and take the risk and produce our nation's food and fiber and fuel are already in very vulnerable financial positions. All of these folks that are being terminated are part of the private and public partnership that we have between agriculture and our federal government.
The USDA makes funds available to CAFO operators trying to implement more environmentally friendly practices and reduce toxic manure runoff that can affect air quality and groundwater. It's not clear what will happen to those programs or the people who still work there.
Maintain, nourish, and support your health by visiting our Good Health, Good Life shopping tab. You'll find select multivitamins, probiotics, and more designed for you. Make the Good Life even better and promote your health in 2025.
Up to $165 million of potential new revenue could help the state's anticipated budget shortfall. That's according to a new economic forecast for the state of Nebraska. An increase in corporate tax collections could make up around $65 million. Recent adjustments recommended by the Unicameral's Appropriations Committee, coupled with the projected newfound cash, could help bring the former shortfall of over $430 million to about $200 million, along with an additional $100 million in tax receipts collected by the state. Governor Jim Pillen said that could help with property tax relief and education investments. Opponents to the tax plan, though, uncertain as to the reason for such an impetus on property tax relief, since those aren't set by the state to begin with, although most everyone seemed somewhat optimistic about the Economic Forecasting Advisory Board's report. Texas is experiencing its largest measles outbreak in 3 decades. Over 100 cases reported so far. Health officials worry that number will grow. Jen Sullivan has the latest.
As the measles outbreak worsens in Texas, there's growing concerns over public safety.
We are seeing a worrying, expanding outbreak of measles.
In western Texas, at least 146 cases of measles have been reported this year. But Dr. Jennifer Shuford says those numbers could be much higher.
This is actually larger than our confirmed count case, and it continues to grow.
The latest update from state health officials comes just days after the outbreak's first death, a school-aged child who was not vaccinated and had been hospitalized in Lubbock. Measles is a highly contagious disease that can cause a rash of red spots, fever, cough, and red watery eyes. Health officials say the best protection is to get the MMR vaccine. which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella.
It's really only the unvaccinated that are at risk.
The first dose of the vaccine is typically given to children ages 12 to 15 months and is 93% effective. The second dose, given to kids between 4 and 6 years old, is about 97% effective, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Health officials warn that infants who are not yet eligible for the vaccine are at a high risk during an outbreak.
We know they can have really serious outcomes. And so it is something that we're concerned about, that we're following closely and trying to intervene on.
While the majority of cases are emerging in Texas, at least 8 other states have reported a total of 18 measles cases this year, according to the CDC. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
Many mainstream economists say the cost of cars and groceries could go up soon. That's due to new tariffs President Donald Trump's expected to impose tonight. He says they're partly a negotiation tactic to stem the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. and increase border security. But investors seem worried about inflation. Amy Kiley has more on how the Trump administration is trying to ease those concerns.
There are going to be tariffs on Tuesday on Mexico and Canada.
The Commerce Secretary confirms new tariffs are on track to begin around midnight Eastern time tonight. He says a 10% hike on Chinese imports is on the table, on top of last month's increase. Executive orders also call for tariffs on most Canadian and all Mexican goods worth more than $800. The Secretary says the percentage of those duties is unclear. He says the president believes America's neighbors are making progress on border security.
He's sort of thinking about right now how exactly he wants to play it with Mexico and Canada, and that is a fluid situation.
U.S. companies are the ones that have to pay the tariffs. The Trump administration downplays how much of that cost they'd pass on to consumers. Many economists say the proposed tariffs could increase prices for goods like shoes, electronics, groceries, and especially vehicles.
If you can buy one before Tuesday, before the tariffs come in and we either shut down or become more expensive, you should go and do it.
Another concern is that Mexico, China, and Canada could impose retaliatory measures.
We will have a strong, unequivocal, and proportional response as Canadians expect.
But some analysts say the new tariffs could be good for the U.S. in the end. The Trump administration says they're leverage.
And the key would be no tariffs. But to get there, there's a negotiation. He's starting that negotiation.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
A former Nebraska wide receiver arrested in northeast Nebraska after his vehicle broke down near Pilger. Authorities say while dealing with a flat tire, they discovered that Xavier Betts was driving with a suspended license. He was also found to be wanted on a probation bond in Iowa with an active warrant for his arrest. Betts was taken into custody and booked into jail pending an extradition hearing in Iowa. Last week, a duplex in Grand Island caught fire, and it was 2 students at the scene who made the 911 call. Take a listen.
We usually take, where the house burned down, we usually come through this little space, and me and the other girl I walk home with every day, me and her saw smoke, so I went up there, and I didn't see all the flames, so I didn't see that the car was on fire. I didn't see exactly the car was on fire, but I just saw flames.
Price and his friend Amelia were quick to act when they saw the fire break out, called 911, and stayed on the line with dispatch until they saw firefighters arrive at the scene. A resident said they had no idea the fire was happening. Luckily, Price and Amelia were there to inform dispatch, and no one was hurt. The Pentagon has ordered more forces to the southern border in a move that bolsters one of the Trump administration's highest priority missions. The Pentagon announcing more than 1,100 troops will deploy to the border over the next several days. They'll support joint task force operations at the border with Mexico. With the additional troops, a total of about 6,000 military personnel will be supporting Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection efforts at the border. The troops come from bases including Fort Campbell in Kentucky, Fort Carson in Colorado, and the newly renamed Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with European leaders yesterday in the UK. It comes on the heels of a tumultuous meeting with President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance at the White House. Jen Sullivan has more on the support Zelenskyy is getting from many European leaders as his relationship with the U.S. becomes rocky.
Can you still work with President Trump?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy meeting with many European leaders at a summit Sunday in London, including UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the two warmly embracing. The exchange coming less than 2 days after Zelenskyy's explosive Oval Office clash with President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance over the U.S.'s involvement in the Ukraine-Russia war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. We're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right.
Following the combative meeting, President Trump canceled a joint press conference with Zelenskyy, and the Ukrainian leader was escorted out of the White House. The meeting leaving Western allies reeling and throwing the future of the Russia-Ukraine war into deep uncertainty as the conflict enters a fourth year. Many European leaders are hopeful a peace deal can be made between Russia and Ukraine. And on Sunday, British Prime Minister Starmer said the UK, France, and perhaps other countries would work on a plan to end the war.
When a deal arises and is struck, that we stand ready, and Europe will play a big role here to make sure that that deal, that peace can be maintained.
But many Republican leaders backing Trump and accusing Zelenskyy of being ungrateful and uncooperative.
I think it's a big mistake, and I hope he changes his mind.
On Saturday, Zelenskyy and Starmer signed an agreement to accelerate $2.8 billion worth of loans to Ukraine. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
A new health, life, and retirement insurance company bringing new jobs to Northeast Nebraska. A new call center actually opened last fall, but was welcomed by Norfolk's Chamber of Commerce and other special guests on Friday. Hanky Hazelton has more.
With all of Physicians Mutual operations taking place in the greater Omaha area, they started having some staffing challenges, which allowed them to explore different options and later led them to open a second location in the rural town of Norfolk. And this became, so great that they decided to have the president come and speak here. But it also caught the attention of Nebraska's very own Congressman Mike Flood.
We introduced Physicians Mutual to our Growing Together scholars through Wayne State College. Rob Reed, the CEO, was so impressed that he said, you know what, let's start planning to put jobs up in Norfolk. And here we are today celebrating something that is the first time this has happened in the history of Physicians Mutual since 1902, that they've expanded outside of the Omaha metropolitan area.
I think for too many years we've seen the large metropolitan areas in our state suck in like a vacuum a lot of the talent in the other parts of our state. And I think it's really important that we find ways to invest, not just in Omaha, not just in Lincoln, but in greater Nebraska. And that's why we're so excited to be here in Norfolk.
President Reed said with their 19 current employees, this is only going to be the start of something great, and hopefully over time, with more job opportunities and their presence coming into the area, things will only get bigger from here on out. In Norfolk, Hanky Hazelton, News Channel Nebraska.
And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com and click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X. Like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. This is News Channel Nebraska.